The government decided to dox somebody. Kilmar Abrego Garcia's wife. Put her full mask. We do have elected officials speaking out about this. So his wife has been forced to hide in a safe house after the government published her address. This is the wife of deported migrant, Mr. Garcia, has revealed she was moved into a safe house after government officials posted her address on social media. Democratic Representative Ansari, Instagram, here it is.
I'm not here to really advocate for one person. That needs to happen in court. No evidence has actually ever been presented.
You went to El Salvador. Now you're saying it's not about him. Of course it's about him.
Due process.
You went to El Salvador for a political stunt, and now you're saying it's not about him.
It is about this case, Laura. It is about the rule of law. This is a bipartisan issue. It transcends partisan politics. That's why a conservative-leaning Supreme Court has said that Donald Trump must facilitate the return of this individual. This is very dangerous. We are turning into an authoritarian country, and there are Americans from all across the political spectrum who are deeply concerned about this. Again, my office has not received more calls about any other issue since I have been a congresswoman than this one, tariffs being the second one, and the lack of real logical economic policy. But the issue of due process. No, these are, and when we had a town hall the other night, this is the issue. And the economy is
blah, 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 due process, Constitution. That's the only line these individuals can take when they stand opposite of common sense. They can no longer talk about their great love for the Constitution. They can no longer talk about their great adherence to law or even the United States Supreme Court or judicial remedy. Jennifer Vasquez Sura spoke with the Washington Post, María Luisa Paúl, after her husband's ongoing case and the depiction by the Trump administration. Sura said her address was shared publicly when the Department of Homeland Security, isn't that ironic, Homeland Security? The Department of Homeland Security posted an order of protection she sought and ultimately abandoned against her husband. The reason they did this is even disturbing. It's disturbing they did it, right? It's also disturbing they did it intentionally. It was not an accident. And then they did it intentionally in order to muddy up the public relations or public opinion of this ordeal, because they know they don't have evidence for court. Courts weigh evidence. Now, the order did not have her address redacted. So fearing for her own safety and the safety of her children, she has 3 of them. She has moved to a safe house as government officials openly mocked her husband and paint him as a criminal. Quote, "I don't feel safe when the government posts my address." That's quite understandable. None of us would. The house where my family lives for everyone to see, especially when this case has gone viral. And by the way, it's viral because they intended it to go viral. Especially when this case has gone viral and people have all sorts of opinions, she said. So this is definitely a bit terrifying. I'm scared for my kids. And she's talking as any parent would. Mr. Garcia was deported to a mega prison meant for gang members in El Salvador. A move the administration initially admitted was done in error. At least that's what they're saying publicly. White House Press Secretary contended last week that Garcia's imprisonment was no mistake. Uh-oh. Government officials have insisted that Garcia is an MS-13 gang member. Yes, MS-13 gang member, despite his denial, despite having no prior gang-related convictions whatsoever, and despite the fact MS-13 don't claim him. There's more. Put it up, fullback. A Venezuelan delivery driver was disappeared after making a wrong turn. The Trump administration claims they know where he is. In January, a delivery worker in Michigan had picked up an order from McDonald's and was on his way to his destination when he made a wrong turn on a bridge into Canada. It actually happens to a few people a year. When Ricardo Prada Vasquez tried to re-enter the country from the Ambassador Bridge, the 32-year-old Venezuelan immigrant was detained by immigration. March 15th, the same day, dozens of alleged gang members were summarily removed from the country and sent to a brutal prison in Salvador. Prada told a friend in Chicago he was being detained in Texas, expecting he would get on the plane to Venezuela. But he was not on a leaked list of 238 names. These names were immigrants sent to El Salvador. He wasn't identified in the photos of men filmed inside of the jail getting their heads shaved in shackles. Attorneys and family members have no idea where he is. Then on April 22nd, only after his story was reported in the New York Times, Donald Trump's administration said he was actually deported. Deported is the word they use, to El Salvador. The case is raising alarms from immigration attorneys and advocates who fear he is not the only one to seemingly disappear, or that more people have been removed from the country than previously reported. This is something that I said 2 weeks ago on this show. I said, we are reporting on the ones we know about, but there are those, I promise you, we do not. And the evidence is mounting that our government is involved in a national, international, systemic, intentional, and corrupt kidnapping scheme. While the Fox News host and those who subscribe to the Trump ideology celebrate this madness, understand what you're doing. I did not hear any of you advocate for this brand of corruption during any of Trump's presidential campaigns. If this was such a winner, if this was such a need, why is it that none of you said you want it until Trump started doing it? All right, Yasmin, thoughts here.
Yeah, this story, this whole saga is ridiculous. And this story has become so convoluted. And the reason why it's become so convoluted is because Republicans, both the Trump administration and right-wing media, they just refuse to admit that they screwed up, which is a very natural and normal thing to happen. Politically, they believe that they can't afford to admit that they screwed up, but also we don't really know the details of whatever deal Trump has made with Bukele. So since we don't know those details and they're not going to give them to us, they have turned to they're just doing all this posturing in the media instead. They have to dilute the story. They have to start a national debate, not just around whether or not the deportation, this specific deportation should have happened, but over whether or not Abrego Garcia was a good person, and more significantly over whether or not due process is something that we need to be protecting in this country. And it's so disappointing that people who still support this move and this administration are allowing their very manufactured fear of this man and of immigrants and of anyone who is different from them to impede their support of the Constitution. And Republicans know that, right? The people who are manufacturing all these fears know that. They know that scared people are irrational people. They are not thinking people. People will justify all kinds of horrific things if they think their own safety is at risk. And that sentiment is hard to argue against. But what we can argue against is whether or not these fears are founded or grounded in any kind of reality. And it's really interesting how people who consume left-wing media are simply not as fearful of immigrants or terrorism or gang violence as people who consume right-wing media are. I think that's very telling. And I think it says that a lot of us are really not grounded in reality.
Yeah, really not grounded in reality. We'll bring updates as they develop. Obviously, there are more updates to bring.